All right, everybody, we are back. We're back quicker this week. I mean, we just dropped Saturday, right? We just dropped on Saturday. We're back already. I mean, it's draft season, so I mean, we're gonna be hitting you guys with a whole bunch of stuff, and this is a special episode for us. So make sure you guys hit the, you know what it is. It's Tape Don't Lie. I forgot to introduce what the show was. It's Tape Don't Lie. It's your boy Marcus Johnson, Mark John NFL, BD Williams, right? Make sure you guys follow us at the Mark John NFL at BD Williams 18, and make sure that you guys hit the subscribe button. Right, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, follow us on Twitter, and we got a special episode this week. We're going to be going over the Senior Bowl, and we have a special guest who actually went to the Senior Bowl to cover it live. We got my man Matt Holder from Expand the Box Score, draft analyst from Expand the Box Score. Go ahead and give him that Twitter handle, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. First of all, BD pulling off a late shift here on the East Coast. But
all the time.
You can follow me on Twitter at mholder95. Pretty active on Raiders Twitter, love draft Twitter and all this stuff. So looking forward to it.
Definitely give my guy Matt a follow here. He's a really smart guy. I've written with for the same website as him in the past. He's a hardworking dude. He went down to Mobile in a pandemic, okay, to bring us.
Yeah, I sacrificed for you guys just to come on here. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right. So give Matt a follow on Twitter. Definitely, we'll drop his Twitter handle in the subscription or in the link below.
Yeah.
Okay. So Matt, I first of all just want to say things are coming full circle for me here. One of the very first podcasts I ever went on was you and Jose, the Fly Sweep podcast, right?
Rest in peace.
But so things. It's funny how things come in full circle. I'm glad that we could have you on as a guest. First of all, how was Mobile? Can you just explain what the Senior Bowl is for people who might not be initiated into the draft Twitter?
So the Senior Bowl, it's as the name implies, for any guy who at least spent 4 years in college. They invite him out there. Typically, you're not going to get a whole bunch of top flight guys like Trevor Lawrence was a senior. He's still not going to be going there. Those type of guys. You're really looking at like a lot of like mid-round guys. Maybe some guys that sneak into the second round. Maybe a couple that end up leaking in if they have a good week into the first round. But it's really an all-star game where they get to showcase and compete against one another, compete against other guys that are about the same skill level. I was fortunate enough to go to the first 2 days of practice, which, if you guys notice, the people that watch the game, the game itself is not always that big of a deal. It's really the practice where it's like those guys are getting after it. They're competing it. It's 1-on-1, 7-on-7, full pads, or full 11-on-11. And I mean, there are a handful of guys that have big weeks, like Javon Kinlaw had killed it at the Senior Bowl. He made his name at the Senior Bowl and then didn't even play in the game. It's an awesome event put on by Jim Nagy down there, and every scout's out there. Every team's going to be represented. Pretty much everyone that's covers the draft is going to be out there. And usually they have just about every beat writer, but with COVID, it was a little bit different this year and whatnot. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Matt. Were you starstruck the first time you went? Were you a little starstruck seeing some of those guys that you've probably never really seen in person?
Yeah. So I'll share this one very embarrassing story for myself. Was the guy that I look up to the most in the draft community, the guy that I aspire to be, is Dane Brugler. And so on day one, Dane had posted a picture at the Senior Bowl. And so like day two, like one of my goals going there was to try and meet him and network with him. Excuse me. And so I like looked at his picture, and one, I was like, all right, he's like right on the 50 in the back row. That's a great spot to kind of rubberneck. So one, obviously he's the vet. He knows what he's doing. So that's what I want to be there. All right, the next day I'm going to sit there. Maybe he's around that, whatnot. I go to that spot. I look over and I see him. I'm like, I think that's him. But I was like too nervous to like go up to him and talk to him. See the A on his jacket and like it's like at the Athletic. I'm like, okay, that's him. I probably stare at him for like an hour. Like I'm like sitting there going through my head, like, what do I say? Like, what's my first line? Do I introduce myself? Do I shake his hand because it's COVID? Like, is he going to be okay with me sitting like, less than 6 feet apart from him? So I'm like running through that, getting all my social anxiety. Finally muster up the courage. Made it probably way more socially awkward for him than it needed to be. ended up talking to him for like 10 15 minutes, just talking to him about different draft prospects and, talking about the day one, and ended up talking to him about some life stuff too. I was getting into the personal stuff, ended up getting his contact info. And I mean, that really just made the trip for me. Like I said, that's the guy that, I look up to the most, that I got to meet, and really made my whole trip. But it was definitely, I told my fiance later, I'm like, I was more nervous talking to him for the first time than I was talking to you. So if that tells you anything, which she wasn't happy about. But
you shouldn't have said that. Shouldn't have said that, Matt.
I paid for that one.
That's funny. That's good. That's good. It's just hilarious because my first time going to the Senior Bowl, man, I got on the plane to get to Mobile from Charlotte, and Mike Mayock was on the plane. So
that's sick.
I was like, oh my God. And he was sitting next to David Shaw, and then they were just talking to each other. So I was like, oh my God. And then, the second time I went, it was a lot easier for me to go talk to people. Like you won't even think about it the second time you go. You just go because you're over that whole, like, oh my God, that's Mike Mayock. Oh my God, that's Ian Rappaport. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, it's
for sure.
That first time it always hits me like that. So
yeah, for sure. And I was definitely like after talking with Dan, I'm like, oh yeah, I can just talk to anybody, and I can just go up to anywhere. Like Matt Miller's there. I'm like, yeah, what do you know? I've already done the worst part about it. So
yeah,
I made a fool of myself to one person. Might as well do it to two.
Exactly. So how was the competition down there? Like, how did you like the competition? Did you like the talent level? Did you feel like it was better than the year before?
I mean, I didn't get a chance to go to the year before, so I don't know 100%. This is my first time going, but I mean, I loved it. I love seeing guys compete. I'm kind of a football nerd. I love seeing how like the NFL practice is run, and seeing those guys getting after it. I felt like the competition was pretty back and forth for a lot of the guys for most of the week. I will say at one point, Matt Rule called the whole team up about halfway through the practice and laid into them for their effort level, which was, kind of a cool thing to see, but also at the same time, I'm like, I don't know how you guys are not out here ready to compete all 100% of the time. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely high spirited, especially day one. There was a right in front of me, Thomas Graham basically put Ben Skoenreck on the ground in a one-on-one press drill and got up and got in his face. So there was definitely some high tensions going on, but for sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
So we're gonna keep this Raider centric here. Okay. Definitely. We think I think the Raiders needs, everyone knows. Okay. They're probably not debatable at this point. Need interior defensive linemen,
Definitely.
maybe another smaller edge rusher to fit Gus Bradley's scheme. Definitely another safety to go with Jonathan Abram back there. And then on offense, Trent Brown, I think his status is a little bit up in the air. So offensive tackle, and maybe a running back, so we're going to, keep the questions about those positions, if you don't mind, so let's just jump into it. This is something that we watched film together before the Senior Bowl on safeties. Can you tell me about maybe some safeties that caught your eye, or, a safety or two that you think would be a good fit on the Raiders?
Well, I think the first guy that comes to mind is going to be Richie Grant. And I almost feel bad for calling him just a safety, because I think part of the reason why he stuck out so much is the guy was playing outside corner, playing nickel, and playing safety, and was just shutting people down at all levels. I mean, he had a hell of a week. He honestly is probably up there for one of the best weeks out of anybody. I mean, he got a few picks and one-on-ones, which is hard to do. Got some more picks, got another one in 7-on-7, and he was just all over the field. I remember when we were talking before, one of the big things that is huge with safeties is going to be versatility. And I mean, he showed that. He played in the box, played everywhere you could imagine. And I mean, he kind of like reminds me, if we're going to put it in Gus Bradley terms, kind of like the Derwin James, if you will, probably not as high profile as Derwin was coming out, but kind of fits that mold of, he can just kind of do everything. He can, like I said, he can cover the slot for you, he can cover the deep half for you, or play center field for you. So he was definitely the biggest one that stood out to me. The other guy was actually someone, BD, you called to mind the next day, was Damar Hamlin. I didn't see him stand out as much as Richie Grant did, but Hamlin had a pretty good week where, I think I shared at least one clip where he's kind of winning with some physicality, getting his hands, using good hands, and being able to lock up tight ends. And, I mean, you can probably speak to him a little bit more, but he was another guy that just kind of stood out and was one of the few Pittsburgh guys out there that had a really good week. So
very cool. Very good. Very good.
Is there anybody who disappointed you at the safety position that you would say?
I got to say, BD, we were watching Hamza Nasser-Ladin before, and it wasn't. I don't want to say he had a terrible week, because I did hear from other people that he was doing all right in one-on-ones versus tight ends and running backs. But when he was covering receivers, it was butt ugly. Like I don't know if he won a single rep in one-on-ones. It was really bad. He was getting roasted. And I mean, I think Tony Pauline from PFN or from Pro Football Network even tweeted out he might be better off putting on 10 pounds, getting up to 230 and playing linebacker, because it was not pretty when he was going up against the receivers, and it wasn't even like one type, where with the smaller receivers that could just get by him. I mean, change of direction, didn't look good. It was all bad for him. And he was a guy that, especially after watching him with BD, I was really excited to see, and ended up being kind of a disappointment. And it's not to say that he won't get drafted or he's not going to still get drafted high, because he still has a role in the NFL. But we thought he was a Swiss Army knife going in, and he might be a few tools short, because he definitely cannot cover receivers one-on-one.
That's interesting. I wonder how much, because I did some more digging on, the reason why he only played a couple games in 2020, and he had a knee that he had a knee injury, I believe it was, and he missed basically the entire 2020 season. So I wonder how much of that might have played into it. But yeah, I mean, big guys, long guys, he's over 6'3" or something like that,
I think he's 6'4" measured in it.
Right. Okay. There you go. Yeah. So it's going to be tough to change directions in man coverage. That's for sure. That'd be a rare DB who could do that. But yeah.
And in fairness to him, you guys can speak to this too. One-on-ones as a safety is just such a weird position, especially going against a wide receiver. It doesn't necessarily translate as bad. So again, maybe I'm being too hard on him, but it definitely, when you compare it to someone like Richie Grant, who had no problems, it's kind of the standard,
Right. Yeah, because I saw some tape on him too. I mean, he did do well against tight ends. I think he did a whole lot better against tight ends and running backs and stuff like that. So, I mean, Tony Pauline might be right. He might have to put on 10 pounds and play linebacker to fit that situation, because, I mean, if he has to guard or play deep safety or have to deal with some of those guys inside, or somebody gets, he has to handle the vertical coming. I mean, we don't know if he can hang with those type of guys, but tight ends and stuff like that, I mean, he could definitely factor in there for sure.
Cover 3. Gus Bradley's scheme. All zone, baby. Let's go. Let's do it.
And he's kind of a thumper too at whatever weight he was at. He was at 220, something like that, 225. I mean, the game we watched, BD, he got 2 forced fumbles. He at 6'4", he gets his butt down and tackles low, puts his head on the ball. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot to like about his game for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So another position of need that we have, that we've been looking at, of course, is just defensive line altogether. So, and we can start with the defensive tackles. I mean, there's some guys I really like there, Onzuike, if I say that right. I got it right the first time.
I'm not going to try it. I'm not even going to try it.
Just call him Levi, right? Levi, and then Tuipa Lotu was out there. So who are some standouts for you at the defensive tackle position? Let's just start there.
Yeah, so I think the biggest standout for me, and it's another name that I'm probably going to butcher, which is Osa Odighizuwa from UCLA. Yes. He had a hell of a week. He was actually one of the guys I did for Expand the Box Score, and I liked him a lot as a run defender. I thought he had some work to do as a pass rusher, especially starting to win with finesse. He could get some pressure with a bull, and was a strong dude who, when he's one-gapping and playing that 3 technique, and can get off the ball, and can definitely get in there. But at the Senior Bowl, what he showed was he actually showed a little finesse moves in the actual game. He beat Deontay Brown, which granted Deontay Brown had a rough week, but he beat Deontay Brown with a nice little not arm over, but nice little finesse move to get a sack. And he was, I shared one clip of him doing his thing against the run, splitting a double team for a TFL, which I mean is absolutely huge as a defensive tackle. I mean, when you see 2 guys coming, you're just thinking to hold my water, make a pile, and to actually split it and be in position to make the play, that's huge. I mean, he was a guy that I really loved. I thought stood out great. Again, I'm not 100% sold on his pass rush, how it's going to translate. Yeah. So I think that's where some Raider fans might be a little cautious about him. But I mean, like I said, he showed some improvement, which is really what you're looking for out of the Senior Bowl. And, if he can actually, work on playing one spot, I think that will do him wonders, because at UCLA, I mean, I don't know what the hell they were doing. They had him playing like basically everywhere. He's playing nose, he's playing six tech, he's playing out wide. And I mean, when I'm watching, I'm like the whole time, like, I'm like, he's just a better three tech. Like, I don't know why you guys don't just stick him there. I mean, they have their little 3-4 defense where the linebacker drops and he goes around to the outside to contain the edge. And I'm like, hey, that's just not his game. That's not what he's good at. And, there were a couple UCLA guys going a little bit of a tangent with Demetric Felton, who we saw that with too, that looked like they were a little bit out of position based on what we saw in the Senior Bowl. So I would be really excited to see what he can do as a full-time three tech instead of playing every single spot for UCLA. Yeah. Okay. And then another guy I really like too, who I didn't know a whole lot about going into the week, was Cam Sample from Tulane.
Yes, I was gonna bring him up.
He's the problem with him is he's like 270, maybe 275. So he's a little bit big for DN, probably too light for a defensive tackle. But his first step was killing people all week. He was just firing off the ball, getting after it in pass rush. Again, I haven't watched too much tape on him. He was a guy that now that I've seen him at the Senior Bowl, I'm definitely going to have to go back and take a look at. But yeah, he had a hell of a week, and especially in his pass rush. It's just a matter of, is this guy going to be big enough to be able to play, to be able to hold up against the run in the NFL? And then if he gets bigger, how is that going to affect his first step? Because that's really how he wins most frequently than in pass rush. But
how tall is he?
I think he's not very tall either. I feel like he's 6'2", 6'3", maybe. I don't know off the top of my head, but he's not. Yeah, he wasn't the biggest dude by any means out there.
So he's not like a 3-4 defensive end. Probably not then at 6'3".
No, probably not. No.
Yeah. He played I watched some of his tape at Tulane. He played standing up a lot at Tulane.
Oh, he did.
They had him standing up. He had his hand in the ground. Sometimes, a lot of times, he was standing up, rushing the passer from the outside. But the NFL, I think, wants him to play inside because that's what he did exclusively at the Senior Bowl. But he was murdering people at one-on-ones. He was just he was unblockable basically. And even in the games, and then a couple of times, in 11 on 11s, I mean, he did pretty well playing the run inside too. Showed a little play strength. So I thought that was interesting. He really caught my eye a lot when I was watching it.
Yeah, he was definitely one of the talks of the media folk after the fact.
Yeah,
he made himself a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. If he was like a fringe draft pick, he's definitely getting drafted now for sure. Somebody's gonna take him.
Last week we talked about defensive tackles, and Marcus did a great breakdown. Two guys he brought up, Onwuzurike and Tuipulotu from the Pac-12. Both those guys were at the Senior Bowl, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just give us some impressions on those guys?
So Levi, he had his first day. He had some good reps, especially from what I saw against the run. He got into Creed Humphrey a couple times, and I think made a couple TFLs and was getting some displacement. But then he got the second day. I'm not sure what happened. He got hurt and was out, and I don't know about the third, but I don't think he played in the game either. So I think he was only limited to one game or one day, which I know some people have kind of been holding against him, just because from the standpoint if he opted out for the year, which again I completely get from a COVID standpoint. I'm not going to fault the guy for that. But then when that happens, then you go to the Senior Bowl where this is your chance to show out and show everybody what you've been working on over the last offseason, and you can only show one day is a bit of a tough one. And then you guys gave me like the worst names. I swear you're trying to embarrass me over here. But the USC D tackle, he was a guy when he walked out, I'm like, he catches your eye because he's just friggin' massive. But I didn't really, I can't really say I really noticed him, doing anything good or bad. Where he's just kind of out there. I don't know if you guys, I don't know, you guys won the film a little bit if you guys saw anything, but he definitely wasn't a standout like Odighizuwa or Cam Sample was, from what I could tell.
Yeah, Marlon didn't stand out at all. He didn't really stand out, but he didn't have a bad week either. He kind of just did his job. I think I feel like that he, if you came in there like high on him, you left high on him. If you came in there low on him, you might have stayed low on him. I think that's kind of how he performed. And
Makes sense.
it's same way with Levi. I think if you were high on Levi, you would have stayed high on him after he left. But if you had some kind of, something against him or whatever, you probably left there like, okay, well, he didn't play this year, and now he's hurt.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny you say that. I was listening to another podcast, another draft podcast, and they were talking about the 40 times and how it's convenient when if you like a guy, all of a sudden your stopwatch is a little bit slower than if you don't. So it's kind of I could definitely see that with Levi and with Marlon, with those two for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So just back to D-line. Carlos is Basham. Am I saying that? Is that right? Carlos Basham. Yeah, right. He played exclusively inside all week to me when I watched. I don't know how much he played outside that you saw, Matt, but he played inside like exclusively. Yeah. So what did you think about that? Or what did you think about his performance inside?
So when I was like noticing him the most, I feel like on one-on-one pass rush, he did take some reps on the outside, but I feel like he's a little, because his problem with at least as an edge rusher was when he tries to go into the inside moves, he just gets washed and can't really hold up. Mm-hmm. So I'd be a little bit worried about him playing on the inside up there, because that's basically what you're going to get a lot of.
Yeah.
So I mean, he definitely stood out to me. But honestly, it's interesting. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention to Lebanon's, but yeah, he stood out to me on the edge in the few reps he did take on one-on-ones. Beating guys on that end. So I'm curious, what did you think about him?
Yeah, because when I watched him when he was in 11-11s, they had him inside, like right next to Sample, really? And they had those two guys, and I think it was mostly Wednesday practice, I believe, that I was watching. He was inside, gotcha. And I thought he did really well inside because he's just so quick, but against the run, of course, he didn't do as well because he's 280 pounds. But, we were talking about how Gus Bradley has a certain defensive tackle and like a certain weight, and, Basham is about 10 pounds away from there. So that's why it was interesting that he was playing inside, because if he puts on 10 pounds, which is easy for an athlete like that, I don't think he's going to lose much speed putting on 10 pounds, getting up to 290. It would be interesting.
He's going to put on 10 pounds no matter what. I mean, at that point, you're gonna get that nutrition plan, and you're gonna be able to hire a personal chef and everything. He's gonna put weight on. That's not a problem. It seems like Arden Key is the only guy who can't put weight on.
Sure.
Or if he does, it's not good weight.
Right. Real quick, how tall is Carlos Basham? Off the top of your head, he's taller. I
feel like he's like 6'6", right? Yeah,
he's tall.
Yeah, he's taller than Sample.
He's tall,
he's
right?
a big dude. He's a big dude.
The only guy that I think was shorter than Sample, what's his freaking name, from Coastal Carolina? Because I kept getting those two mixed up because they had similar helmets. Is it Jackson? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was like those are the two guys. Those are the two short guys, and by short we mean 6'2". So
right.
Short by NFL standards, not by human standards.
I'm 6'2", and I'm like, yeah, that guy's short as hell.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, what about some disappointments for defense tackle? Some guys that that maybe disappointed a little bit this week.
I mean, the guy that I was really disappointed with, because I loved him so much when I watched him over the summer, was Marvin Wilson. It's kind of been the theme of the year for him. If you remember over the summer, he was getting top 20 love, maybe even top 15, or it could have been like the first D tackle off the board. It was kind of like this year's Derek Brown. Then he had a bad year this year. I know there was some, from what I've heard, there was some kind of like friction with him and Norvell. I don't know if you guys remember, like in the off season, they kind of had a little bit of beef, and whatnot. So I've heard, like, the rumor is that was kind of playing into what he did at why he was performing so poorly at Florida State, which, given the circumstances of that issue, like I understand completely. But then he kind of came out to the Senior Bowl, and like the first thing I noticed, I'm like, he looked chubbier, man. He looked like he was carrying some bad weight, and that was the opposite of what he needed to do. Over the summer, I thought he kind of needed to slim down a little bit, maybe get a little bit quicker, work on his athleticism a little bit. Because the guy is freaking strong enough. I mean, when I was watching him over the summer, I watched him pull freaking Mekhi Becton on the ground. I mean, and Mekhi Becton, reminds you, was at like 365 at Louisville.
Yeah.
But he kind of came out. He had his moments where he looked like old Marvin Wilson. Then he had his moments where he looked like this year's Marvin Wilson. and he got hurt again. So he's kind of another guy like Levi, where it's like, it's tough. I don't want to hold an injury against you, and I get it. Like, I get you're going to be more cautious at an event like the Senior Bowl, because if you do make it worse, it's going to cost you a lot of money. But at the same time, when I watched you play this year and wasn't happy with what I saw, and then I saw you in the Senior Bowl, and you're up and down, and now I can't get any more film on you, I'm gonna have a hard time spending a top pick on you. And I mean, I'm seeing him right now getting mocked in like the 3rd round, which is a huge fall from, like I was saying, a top 20, top 15 candidate.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was just the biggest disappointment. And that's not to say that he was like the worst guy there, or anything like that. It was just, he's a high profile guy that like I was talking about before, that doesn't always play in the Senior Bowl. So he's going to have all the eyes on him, and, just kind of fell flat, and it sucks, but is what it is. I mean, if the Raiders can get him in the 3rd round, I'd be all for it.
Yeah,
I'd be down for that. So
it's really interesting because, I'm with you. I watched him, his 2019. I think I watched like 3 or 4 games of his, and I was like, man, this guy is like really, really good.
Yeah.
So I was really surprised that he didn't come out after putting that tape, out there. So yeah, disappointing that he had a bad 2020 for sure.
And he finished last year. I mean, it was a broken hand, so nothing that's going to linger. But it's like now it's like 2 years worth of injury, so it's kind of like getting that injury prone label slapped on you now.
Right.
Yeah. He just had no burst this year. Like,
yeah,
he's no burst at all. So it just all went away for him, to be honest.
For sure. I mean, hopefully he can lose like 10, 20 pounds, go the opposite way as some of the other guys were talking. But yeah, I mean, like I said, he was a massive dude. When I saw him in person, like, you stand out, but again, like, unfortunately not quite as much as I would have liked on the field.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. What's the next position in need here?
So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little, Matt. So,
okay.
Gus Bradley, he runs a 4.3 under. Okay, so he's got a Sam linebacker who he likes to put on the line of scrimmage. Okay, and he also has, that famous Seattle Leo position.
Mm-hmm.
That's been guys like Yannick Ngakoue, who's like 6'2.5", 250 pounds. Were there any edge rushers that kind of fit that profile of like, are they a linebacker? Are they a defensive end? Maybe a little smaller than a defensive end. Was there any guy like that at the Senior Bowl that caught your eye?
Yeah, the guy that actually caught my eye that I'm very surprised he's not getting as much love is going to be Quincy Roche out of Miami. I don't know if he's going to be athletic enough to drop into coverage or that kind of type, but I don't think he'll necessarily need to with Gus Bradley. But I mean, he was going up against Alex Leatherwood, and kicked Alex Leatherwood's ass all freaking day. I mean, he looked really good. He was winning a lot on one-on-ones. And again, I was surprised he wasn't getting the attention or the love, after the fact that some of these other guys were. And I feel like with him, like don't get me wrong, like the other guys from Miami are better. Like Gregory Rousseau is better. Jalen Phillips is better. But, when you start talking about he's the 3rd best player at his position from his school, I feel like he kind of falls under the radar a little bit. He's still a high enough profile guy that, we know about him, we'll hear about him, but he's not getting as much love. And I mean, he did exactly what he needed to do at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he was winning as a pass rusher. He's another guy who, if the Raiders end up taking like a 3rd round pick on him, I'd be all for it. I think he could fit that profile pretty well. I mean, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, I thought he had one hell of a week. So
yeah, I thought Roche had a great week too. I thought he looked like he definitely could rush the passer against anybody.
Yeah.
And as I'm saying, he played behind Rousseau and Phillips, so he's undersized. I think that's a big thing that people they hate his size. But he has pass rush talent. He has pass rush skills for sure, and he's really exciting
because he's like 6'2", 240, right?
Yeah, he's like that's. In fact, when you were talking about Yannick Ngakoue, I'm like, I didn't even realize how similar in size they were. But yeah, that's about right for his size. So
yeah.
Okay, cool. What are some other guys that played? Some edge guys. I mean, Rashad Weaver was out there too, right?
Yeah, the Pitt guys, honestly, like Weaver wasn't as bad. Like Weaver kind of was just had a mull week, kind of what you were talking about before. If you liked him going into it, kind of you like him coming out, and vice versa. But Patrick Jones was getting worked. He was working some on the inside too, and looked very uncomfortable. I tweeted a clip out of Quinn Meinerz from Whitewater and pass rush, and like he just straight up planted him like in pass rush. I'm like, I don't know how dude, that's a D3 guy, man. Like you went up against better guys at freaking Pitt that just put you in the ground. But as far as like a guy that stood out, and he wasn't necessarily someone who stood out at the Senior Bowl per se, but my guy, got to give a little shout out to Cyril Penn. One of the beauties of being at an event like this was the first time I got to be in the same room with the entire Expand the Box Score team, and he showed us Peyton Turner out of Houston. He's the opposite of Roche size-wise, where he's about 6'6", probably like 270, maybe 280, and he dominated this year. I think Cyril was saying in the beginning, like heading into it in the summer, he was like a 7th round guy, and Cyril gave him like a late 1st, early 2nd round grade for what it's going to translate for our Expand the Box Score stuff. He was out. I mean, he was winning in the American Conference, mind you, but he was winning with power, winning with speed, had good counter moves. He has a nice long arm move, and he has a nice counter where he shows it and then just dips and rips around the edge. I mean, his tape, if anyone else is watching or whatever you guys doing, throw on his Tulane game and you will fall in love, because that guy had one hell of a game. I think he had 3 sacks that game. Mm-hmm. I mean, Tulane, like I swear to God, they tried 4 different tackles on him, and it was like none of them worked. Like they just got to the point where they were fanning the protection to double team him literally every single time, and he was still hitting them. He had a dominant season this year. Again, the Senior Bowl didn't really stand out either way.
Yeah,
but I mean, he was a late bloomer for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: American, athletic conference, they have almost as many NFL players as the Big 12. So I know people, say, oh, it's group of 5, not Power 5, whatever it is. American, like it's getting there. It's getting up there as far as draft prospects for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they still have some dudes.
Yeah, for sure. And I like Turner caught my eye because I was like, he made me go, who's this guy from Houston? Who's his helmet? So I had to check his number and look at the roster. So he definitely caught my eye too. So I mean, that is definitely a sleeper. That's what we call him.
Yeah, it helps to have a shiny helmet at these events. So that's makes you faster. You stand out.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. What else? So tackles.
Yeah, let's transition to the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, let's get to the offensive side of the ball. Raiders fans, we're all worried about Trent Brown. We don't know what the Trent Brown situation is. But the whole offensive line, I think there's some places that, definitely could have some upgrades. So I know there's definitely some standouts at tackle. There's some disappointments at tackle. I know Leatherwood didn't look very well. He didn't look good at all. So what do you think about the offensive line?
We'll still stick with tackles. Like you kind of guys were talking about, I would not be surprised if the Raiders end up cutting Trent Brown and taking a tackle first with their first round pick.
Yeah.
With Trent, I was listening to 2 for 1 and they were talking about it, PFS draft podcast, and I hate this that I'm gonna screw this the full quote up, but he's only played in like if you count up all of his games, he's only played in like 2, maybe 3 full seasons, and he's been in the league like 6 years. And I mean, when you're 380 pounds and reportedly weighed in at 400, like your body just breaks down. Like, I know like some of like his stuff, like with getting COVID and the whole IV situation, that was scary as shit. Obviously wasn't all his fault this year, but at the same time, it's like, we can't pay you $20 million and you only play half the games. Like we got to get something out of you. Like, I'm sorry, man, but like you had a calf injury all training camp, and then you hurt the other calf in 3 games into the season. Like, and you got no dead cap. Like, we got to make a business decision here. But I mean, going back to the Senior Bowl, the guy that stood out to me was Dillon Radunz from North Dakota State. He was a guy I didn't really know a whole lot going into the week because he was an FCS guy. And, they didn't have their season. He only played in 1 game in the Trey Lance Shrine Bowl this year.
Trey Lance Showcase.
Trey Lance
Showcase, when it really should have been the Dillon Radunz Showcase. Man.
I know. And Trey Lance didn't even play well.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, and it's funny. I remember Radunz getting like some love as like a potential late first rounder and maybe early second, which was shocking coming from an FCS school and not being a quarterback. but day one caught my eye, was stoning people in pass pro, moving people and run blocking. And then the second day was the same thing. I'm like, this guy just doesn't lose. This guy is just a stonewall out there. Took some reps at guard too, which is huge. He showed some versatility. I mean, he had a really good week. He was one of the guys, I think I put him in my risers column. Maybe not. And for expand the box score that I wrote, I could have gone off on way more guys than I did, just the 5. But he had a hell of a week. And I mean, I think it would shock people just from the school value to take him at 17, because obviously, like, other than Carson Wentz, no one from North Dakota State's really gone that high.
Yeah.
But his week was that good. Like, it was very impressive. I was sitting near Paul Alexander, who I don't know if a bunch of people like know who that is, but he was a former O-line coach and now kind of like a media guy, kind of does a lot of offensive line stuff. And he had a lot of good things to say about Radunz too. And so he's been getting quite a bit of love.
I love that you brought him up. First of all, for the listeners, okay, there's FCS and then there's North Dakota State University, which is like the Patriots of FCS. Okay, they won like 7 or 8 national championships in like the last 10 years or 11 years. Okay, so yeah, if you're talking about FCS, okay, fine. But if you're talking about North Dakota State University, like, this is the best program in the universe of FCS.
Yeah,
they had a streak of like 5 years, right, where they beat FBS schools, right? I mean, not like great ones, but yeah, they were like they were playing Big 12 teams and beating them.
Yeah. And what people need to realize, okay, I'm gonna go off on a tangent here. You're in D1 AA because of the amount of fans that come to your games. Okay. So if you don't have more than 20,000 fans, like average throughout the year, you can't play D1. You have to be in the FCS.
I didn't know that.
And they're in North Dakota State. Okay. Like, how are they going to get 20,000 fans? They're out in the middle of nowhere, in a very low populated area. Okay. So it's almost impossible for them to get the amount of fans that would need to go to D1, like big time D1.
Yeah.
Whenever they do, they will dominate there too. Okay. Like, this is an incredible program. So if the Raiders get this guy from, I don't want to say his name wrong, Radunz.
I'm probably saying it wrong too.
Yeah, like, if the Raiders get this guy, do not start crying because he's from an FCS school. It is an incredible program. They do a great job over there.
And let's keep it real. The Raiders went to that North Dakota showcase, and a lot of people thought they were going to watch Trey Lance, but we don't. They went. They went there. They sent a bunch of scouts there to watch that showcase. So I think that he is like a guy that they're really, really looking at. And if they took him at 17, I wouldn't be too mad. I mean, I think he has a lot of potential that they can move him around, and I think he could even fit in at right tackle, and he'll figure it out because he's athletic too. He's pretty athletic too. So
yeah, and he's like well built too. He's not like a fat guy, you know what I mean? Like, he's got like pretty like big barrel chested and like kind of even down to the stomach. So that's one of the things I look for in linemen, which, I mean, I hate to pick on the guy, which was not Trent Brown this year.
Yeah. He's not Trent Brown.
He's not. Sure. He's a little bit more athletic, a little bit better feet, but yeah. It's
just funny watching his tape in the FCS games, because when you watch his tape, it's just like he's just embarrassing people, and it's like not even fair.
Yeah, right, for sure.
It's not even the guy he's blocking is a coach. He's gonna coach. He might be the offensive coordinator for Alabama later, but he ain't.
Either that or going to be like a CPA in like 2 years. Like, he's going to get a freaking accounting degree.
All right.
Yeah, for sure. What about inside? I know one guy that really stood out was David Moore from Grambling. I know he really had a great week, and he played guard and center. So what are some other, maybe some guards and centers that stood out?
I'm gonna go with BD brings up the FCS guys because he was an FCS guy. I was a D3 guy. So I'm gonna bring up my D3 guy, Quinn Meinerz, who basically stole the show over the week. I mean, the biggest thing for him is, like I said, he's a D3 guy, so he's the smallest of small school guys, and the dude just comes out rocking his freaking belly out all week. I'm like, you gotta like love the confidence. Like, this guy is like the biggest nobody out of all the nobodies. And he's just rocking gut out the whole time. Like, you got to love the confidence. And then, I mean, like I said, like I was talking about before, he goes up against Patrick Jones, puts him in the ground in pass pro. We've had a pretty good week as a run blocker too. Day one was a little shaky as a run blocker. He he got beat by Levi a few times in when trying to go one-on-one blocking with him. But day 2 looked a lot better. A guy that I was talking about before, Osa Odighizuwa, I thought he had a good week. Well, Meinerz put him on his back at one point when run blocking. So, I mean, he stole the show. I mean, big white dude with dreadlocks and with big old gut hanging out. So he's definitely not going to be a marquee guy, but I mean, he's going to get drafted this year. I will say that. I'm pretty confident after this week.
I saw some clips, and this guy has incredible power, especially in his lower body. That he was moving people, he was anchoring. He had an incredible, impressive week. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, sorry, Matt. Let's talk about Leatherwood, because I know Leatherwood came in there. He came in with some hype. Especially because how big and athletic he is. He's humongous, and he moves. I'm sure he would have been a combine darling, just the way he moves, watching him on tape. What did you see from him? Like, what did you think his issue was during the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, it was funny because the week started out for him great, because obviously there's a lot of talk about him moving to guard, and I've never really gotten that. I'm like, the guy started at Alabama for 2 years at left tackle. Like, why the fuck are you trying to move him into guard? Like, give him that shot. And then he had like 34-inch arms, over 34-inch arms. I'm like, I'm not getting it. And then he went out on the practice field, and I mean, those feet you're talking about, I mean, it looked like he was in cement. Like Quincy Roche, like I said, was kicking his ass all day. There were times where I'm like, I don't even know if you touched the edge defender. It was that bad. Like he could not contain the edge. And then he was getting beat on, and then it was getting so bad that he just started oversetting and getting beat to the inside. I mean, it was just an all bad week from him. There was a point where I'm like, I forget which, I think he was on the Panther staff. Like, if you're the Panther staff, like, the best thing you can do right now is tell him to move into guard, because he is hurting his draft stock right now. And I mean, it was like his hands weren't looking like the same way. And another, like, going back to Paul Alexander, what he was saying is he mentioned this, he's more astute at this than I am, obviously being an NFL coach, but he's saying his pass set was looking differently, or he's working a different pass set, which, okay, if that's what you're doing, but I don't know why you would try and do that now.
Yeah.
Like, go with what's worked, go with what's made you a fringe first rounder, and go with how'd you get started. So I don't know, maybe he was trying something new and it just wasn't working. And maybe if he goes back to his old technique, he'll go back to his old self. But he might have been the biggest loser at the entire event.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny because I just before we started recording this, I was actually watching him before that, and he has that issue with tall, long linemen where they lean forward, kind of like with Brandon Parker. He has that issue, and you can get away with that when you're playing Auburn, and sometimes, and some of those guys, you're not taking the top edge rushers, but there's no way in the NFL he's not gonna get away with that. So he's got to figure that out. But yeah, he's definitely super disappointing this week.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of the same stuff with Deontay Brown, his partner in crime. Like, Deontay Brown, when he walked out, he was another guy. I was like, holy shit, this guy legitimately looks like Blastoise from freaking Pokemon. Like, and he's just way bigger than everyone else.
Yeah.
And then it was the same thing. I'm like, dude, your feet are in cement, man. Like, holy hell. Like, I don't know if you guys watched the game, but he went to go block out in the perimeter on a screen, and it might have been the most painful thing I've ever watched in my entire life.
Yeah, like, I saw that.
He wasn't even close. I'm like, dude, like, you got to be able to move a little bit and play in the NFL.
Yeah, he can't move, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, both the Bama guys, like, obviously being from Bama and, they're high profile, they're going to be talked about, and we're really hyped coming in, and we're major letdowns.
Yeah, I agree with that. It made you think, like, is Alabama more scheme based with their how they protect? And I did notice that too, man. The heavy the heavy RPOs they run, which I got in trouble for that last week, but the heavy RPOs they run, you can see that, like, sometimes when they don't do too many true pass sets,
right?
So when he gets to the Senior Bowl, he has to do a lot more true pass sets and one-on-ones, and it didn't look right. So,
right. I mean, like, their entire all their quick game is built off of RPO. So he's run blocking in their quick game, right? And then they're going to play action, so he's like, that's not, a true pass set. So it's like, how many times are they actually like pass setting out there?
How many times is he actually getting into his vertical set and whatnot
Right.
and having to block for 3 seconds? Because that's the other underrated thing is when you have 4 first-round wide receivers, someone's going to get open quickly.
Yeah.
So you expose as much. Yeah, you bring that up. It's a good point. Obviously there's no way to get it because Nick's not giving it up, but I'd love to see if we could get like one-on-one pass rush for him in practice at Bama and see if it was kind of the same stuff. Because I remember when I was watching the national championship, I think Todd McShay was talking about it, and Nick Saban just straight up told him, he's like, "You're way too high on this guy," and that was last year. And I'm like, if you're a head coach is being like, "Hey, this, my guy, you're way too freaking high on him," that's probably not a good sign, especially when it's one of the best coaches or the best college coach of all time. So, he's going to be a guard. Like there's no getting around it now. Like I'm fully on board the Alex Leatherwood as guard train. Like after seeing what I saw, it was ugly.
That's hilarious.
All right, so let's get to our last position of the day, which is running back. Which I'm sure a lot of people will be like, "Why do we need a running back?" But I think they do need a good backup, or in my opinion, I think they need somebody that can, if Jacobs does get hurt or go down, that could take the load, which I think is the big thing. Like somebody who the Raiders could trust to run the ball 200 times if Jacobs does get hurt. So
now I'm on the opposite spectrum of this. I want to see a home run threat back. Okay. Like I don't want him to carry the load. I want him to get the ball 5-7 times, but like one of those is like a 30-yard run. Like that's the kind of running back I want to see. So give us 2 guys. Yeah. Maybe a bell cow for Marcus and maybe a home run threat for me.
I'll give you 2, and I'm gonna cheat on 1, but we'll start with the bell cow because one of the bell cows that's honestly one of my probably my favorite running back in the class. Not to say that he's the best, Najee and Etienne are the top of the class, whatnot. Yeah. But my favorite guy is actually going to be Rhomondre Stevenson. I needed him for an expand the box score. He's going to be way higher on our scale than what I've seen from anyone else. I thought that guy was an absolute stud at Oklahoma. His contact balance is the best in this draft class. Like, if you watch his game against Florida in the bowl game, he had at least one run where I watched 3 guys hit him and he just didn't even move. Like he's just standing there. He's got that like little squatty body kind of build and just real thick. And guys just bounce off of him, and he's just ineffective. I love that, and I think he can be that bell cow, that bruiser. The thing I don't like about him is he's the kind of guy where on outside zone when his shoulders are pointed towards the sideline, it's not as pretty of a transition up the field. He's not really going to burn anybody. So opposite of what BD's looking for, not really a home run threat type of guy. Mm-hmm. But as far as like being able to run inside zone, run gap runs, guy will run you over, and the guy's got pretty good at the bell cow. I think the biggest problem with him is he was a JUCO guy, ended up going to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma had Kennedy Brooks and Trey Sermon ahead of him. I think both those guys at some point got hurt, and then he later in the year he started getting carries, and that's what I was watching the 2019 tape where I'm like, why the hell isn't this guy getting carries? I'm like, well, yeah, because he's behind 2 other guys that are going to go get drafted too. But he shined out to the point where I think that was part of the reason why Trey Sermon transferred, is because that guy was going to take over. But the problem was at the bowl game, he failed a drug test, and it was an NCAA drug test. Oh. So he had to sit out halfway through this year too. And in a shortened season, he didn't get the rep. So I think that's part of the reason why he's not getting the love. But I also look at that as, okay, well, he's the punishing running back. He's the kind of guy that is going to take a lot of blows. He's not really going to elude a lot of guys. And what's the biggest problem with those guys is how much treads on the tires. Why did Derek slide into the second round a few years ago? Because he's the bell cow at Bama, and people were worried about how much he's got left. Whereas with Stevenson, obviously, it's hurt his draft stock, but at the same time, it could speak to his longevity. He's only played like 500 snaps in college. He's taking less hits and whatnot. So maybe he lasts a little bit longer. And especially if he's coming to the Raiders, where he can be the number 2 back to start out, maybe that will speak to his longevity as a Raider or whatnot or in the NFL, because he's coming in with a lot more tread on the tires than somebody else that might be in that similar running style, but had to get 30-40 carries a game. The guy I'm thinking of to compare him to would be like a Jarrett Patterson from Buffalo, where, I mean, Jarrett Patterson's a good player, obviously made some headlines with his 400-yard game and an outstanding season.
Mm-hmm.
He also got 40 carries a game. Like his body's not going to be able to hold up quite as much. So
yeah.
And the thing that I liked about Stevenson at the Senior Bowl, what I was worried about him was being able to separate as a receiver. Now, he wasn't anything like, I'm not going to say that he's going to be like Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, I think, should still be getting the running back routes. But he showed enough where I was like, okay, this guy can do it. Like there's some tools there for him to be able to win and beat linebackers in one-on-one coverage. It's just not a big part of his game. And then, as a check down, it's just as long as you get him to get the ball in his hands, it's open field and good luck. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Was there a speed guy there?
So that's why I said I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go Demetric Felton.
Oh, dude, that's what I needed to go with this.
So Felton he played running back exclusively this last year, or at least in the games at UCLA. And I think part of that, maybe it's Chip Kelly's incompetence. I'm an Oregon fan, so I love Chip Kelly. So I'm going to say my reasoning is Chip Kelly's offense is predicated on having a dominant running back, i.e. LaMichael James, Kenyon Barner, all those guys, LeGarrette Blount. So that's what I'm going to say to protect my guy Chip there and say that he just needed a dynamic running back. I mean, even Josh Kelly last year at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
And when Kelly was there, Felton played some receiver and played some in the slot. But then this year, like I said, played exclusively running back and was kind of that home run threat type of player. And at the Senior Bowl, he was pretty much a wide receiver. He took a few snaps at running back, but I mean, he was really out there on routes. But I mean, the guy was cooking DBs like I said, he played running back. Like, I mean, he's your kind of guy where if I'm gonna compare the two guys I mentioned, Stevenson would be your Mark Ingram, whereas Felton would be your Alvin Kamara type of guy, where he can line up in the slot, he can line up in the backfield, you can get him in mismatches, you can give him the 5-10 carries, and one of them he's probably going to pop. But he run one wide receiver of the week. There we go, a little tongue teaser for me. And I mean, he had another guy that was absolutely fantastic, one of the biggest risers of the week. And I would love it if they ended up taking a pick on him. He's kind of like, he'd be their Lynn Bowden, just hopefully doesn't get traded to the Dolphins before the season starts. But we'll see it out. Yeah.
All right. Perfect. All right. So we appreciate you coming on here, Matt. Let's go ahead and wrap this up with the news of the day. Because everybody's like, man, what are you guys talking about? You guys talking about the Senior Bowl?
Buried the lead, man.
Yeah, we buried the lead, right? We buried the lead. We gave you guys some content, some draft content, but we're gonna get to the mess. We had a little trade rumor come out.
What is draft rumor too?
Yeah, it's a draft rumor. Derek Carr. Teams are fiending for the Carr now. They want some Derek. It's not like the years before. They're calling the Raiders. The Raiders aren't trying to get other people. Teams are calling them.
Is that what the article said? The people.
Yeah, teams are calling them. The Raiders aren't calling teams. Teams are calling the Raiders.
And I believe they're fielding them, correct? It's not like a hang up situation, right?
I mean, see, the article's weird. So the article's a little weird. So the article starts off like, oh my God, they're going to trade for Deshaun Watson. They're going to give all these picks. And then you get to the bottom of it. He's like, well, the Raiders aren't really shopping him and they might listen. So it's like, but I mean, just the trade scenario itself. So, what are you thinking? Because I thought it's interesting that even teams were thinking about giving up 2 first-round picks for Derek Carr at this point, which I thought was super interesting. I'm like, oh my God, that is he's definitely raised his value and his perception if that is happening. So,
I get it. It was the Saskatchewan Roughriders they called.
About to go play in the CFL, baby. Go win that Grey Cup.
Come on, like it doesn't seem like it makes any sense. I'm not buying it, honestly. Who's giving up 2 first-round picks for Derek Carr? I'm sorry. Like, come on.
I mean, Stafford got 2, right? I mean, but how many? So that's what gets tough.
He's younger. I mean, that's the thing is he's younger than Stafford, and I mean, I'd say Stafford's better, but is Stafford that much better that it's unconceivable to get 2 first-round picks for Derek Carr?
Because my always thing with my Stafford is 33, and I feel like Derek Carr is going to be as good as Stafford when he's 33. That's always my thing with Stafford is like the way their career arcs at, like when Derek Carr, that where Stafford was 29, that's when Stafford actually became like a good quarterback. That everybody he just didn't have glossy numbers. He actually was like playing good quarterback. And I feel like Derek Carr is kind of that same thing. Like, yeah, Raiders fans were all excited when he was like when they went 12-4, but he wasn't that guy that they thought he was, right? And now he's more of like a, this is gonna sound terrible, but I feel like he's more of a, what I watched him this year, he was definitely a consistent pro quarterback this year throughout the year, like a pro veteran quarterback. You're good, typical veteran. Like he's not getting confused by like coverages and blitzes and stuff anymore. So it's interesting with that's why it was always interesting with me with the 2 first-round picks, because I mean, if Stafford got that, like what does Carr get? But I was like, wow, I don't know. So that's, but you're right, BD. I don't know if it's
I mean, let me ask you guys this: if say they only get one for Derek, say they only get one, and when this is completely hypothetical, they get one for Derek, and they're able to flip 2 1s, maybe 3 1s for Deshaun Watson. Are you guys doing that? So you net lose 2 draft picks and get Deshaun Watson.
I mean, I would. Just because I would. Because I think that, Deshaun is just a piece that you could build around for sure. Like, and if you build around him, that you could probably do some serious things. Because my thing with Deshaun Watson is, I've been watching him for a lot of time since he's been in the league, and he's just got better every year. Like the guy that in 2018 is not the guy now. The guy in 2018 was an above average guy who sometimes he made some plays, but he would run around, take sacks too much, and didn't do too much from the pocket, and he just leaned on DeAndre Hopkins. Like this guy now is
this year. Bill O'Brien said you're not leaning on DeAndre Hopkins,
and he just kind of took off.
Yeah.
And and you could kind of see it the year before, but like this year, and he's 25, and that means he hasn't hit his quarterback prime, which is like the 29, 30. That's my thing with Watson.
I mean,
So
I mean, I would be incredibly excited if Deshaun Watson was a Raider, but here's my problem with this whole scenario. They trade Derek Carr, okay, and they get, let's say like a 1st-round pick, maybe a 2nd-round pick or something like that, okay? There's no guarantee that they're going to land Deshaun Watson in a trade. Why would Deshaun Watson want to come to a team with no defense again? Okay, like, come on. Like
maybe he just hates Houston that much. Maybe Jack Easterby's just like that much of a dick. I don't know. I mean,
but
Hunter Renfrow, he's Hunter Renfrow boys. I don't know. They got the national championship connection to win.
Okay, that's Cleveland Farrell. That's
Cleveland Farrell. He's got his boys, man. Tanner Muse too.
Tanner Muse, yeah, him and Tanner.
Don't forget Tanner.
They're friends. So basically, the entire time they were drafting Clemson guys just to recruit,
just to get one. They're playing chess.
Wow, playing chess. You're right. Okay, now it's starting to click here. Now it's starting to make sense.
Yeah, but you're right, BD, because one, he has a no trade clause. That's the biggest thing here. Yeah. Like he's decided. It's not as much. I know Stafford got to kind of pick, but the Lions were just nice. The Lions could have been like, forget you, dog. We'll send you to the dumpster someplace, right? They just kind of respect him a little more, but I think Deshaun Watson, he's going to pick where he wants to go. So if he doesn't want to come to the Raiders and the Raiders trade Carr, we're watching Mariota for 16 weeks, which, I mean, some people will be excited about that. But...
Which, me as a Duck fan.
I know.
Let's go, baby. My grandma lives in Nashville. She's a season ticket holder for the Titans, and that's from his rookie year. So, like I said, I'm a huge Duck fan. So I got a little personal inscribed Marcus Mariota. I'm all about the Marcus Mariota hype, even though I know he's average at best in the NFL.
That's average. That's what I'm saying. But
Chargers game, bro, I was hyped. I could not have been happier, and that was like I felt bad because I feel like I should be as hyped with Derek Carr does similar stuff, but like it was just different, man. Like it was Marcus. Like that was my guy. It's like my kid, like going out there and balling out, even though we're like the same age, which is weird.
Yeah, but 16 games.
We've seen the 16 games.
Yeah, exactly.
We won't talk about that.
Okay. Right, well, yeah. Right. Well, all right. So we addressed the rumor. We had some fun with it. I think we could call that an episode here, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate Matt Holder for coming on. He's a good friend of the show. Dropping some real gems. And being in person at the Senior Bowl. So make sure you guys give Matt Holder a follow at Matt Holder 95 on Twitter. Follow myself, BD Williams 18. Follow Marcus at the Mark John NFL. We are on Twitter. We're going to be, throwing some content up on Twitter. You're going to see some draft prospects. You're going to see some free agents. Make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit the subscribe button and stay tuned, guys. Appreciate it, Raider Nation. We're out.
See you guys.
Thank you guys for having me on, man. Appreciate it. You guys are the best podcast out there, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, nice.
Hey.
All right. See you guys later.